Such a stray empress. Horrifying details from the life and reign of Catherine II. Greetings! Today, we will talk about the great empress of the Russian Empire, Catherine II. You will learn about the facts that are declassified and may shock each of you. How the empress favorites became her lovers, which the woman changed like gloves. What the Germans found in the Amber Room, because of what Catherine began to be called Shalnaya. Is it true that the empress in her old age slept with a horse? Be sure to watch the video to the very end so as not to miss all the details and key moments. Let's first understand what benefit the great empress brought to the Russian state. All the more there is, so to speak, something to be proud of. And then we will already understand other facts that are known to date. So, the era of the reign of Catherine II the Great is called Enlightened Absolutism. The empress ascended the throne in 1762 and in total ruled our country for 34 years, until her death. During this period, a woman who lived 67 years managed to do a lot for Russia. First, Catherine the Great, in a harsh form, despised serfdom and other very negative factors for the ordinary population. And although it was not possible to abolish the dependence of peasants on landlords, the empress believed in a bright future for the country. It is important to note that German by her nationality, she loved Russia very much. Secondly, the empress developed the sphere of science and education. It was under Catherine that the Russian Academy of Sciences was created, and the ideas of the era of Enlightenment began to be actively promoted. Thirdly, Catherine II significantly expanded the territory of the Russian Empire in the interests of foreign policy. The annexation of Belarus, Lithuania, as well as the Crimea occurred just under the reign of the Empress. Thanks to the efforts of this great woman, the Russian territory expanded by more than 500,000 square kilometers. The country, in turn, entered the list of one of the great European powers. All this is certainly commendable, but not without surprises in the life of Catherine the Great herself. And such facts are not just surprising, but shocking in their specificity. Well, let's deal with them in order. Favorites, aka lovers. Surely you know that the Empress had favorites. Among them, quite famous, were such personalities as Peter III, Grigory Orlov, Grigory Potemkin, and others. By the way, the woman married Peter III at the age of 16 and then concluded a marriage alliance with Grigory Alexandrovich Potemkin in the 70s of the 18th century. Most likely you will be surprised, but the total number of favorites of the great empress was 12 people. The first 5 men were at Catherine II until the age of 47, the other 7 until the end of her life. And most importantly, the favorites became full-fledged lovers. And some women changed within a few months, and others for several years. Often, even Potemkin himself advised his wife on whom to pay special attention. Favorites, to all other things, performed another important function. They brought Catherine the great political benefit. After all, it is no secret that many could simply agree on the fulfillment of tasks of national importance. Subsequently, the empress formed a harem, consisting not only of adult men, but also young men. Catherine II was characterized by determination, intelligence, and cleverness, and was quite an enlightened lady. Apparently, for these character traits, just and loved her men and considered her an ideal of beauty and perfection. The Amber Room, aka the Secret Room. Remember about the Amber Room, which is considered to have disappeared without a trace during the Great Patriotic War? Well, it's also called the Secret Room. It is the room that housed Catherine II during her reign. But the room became famous because of its peculiarity. And here's why. When considering the pictures that have survived to this day and are freely available, you can clearly discern the interior for adults. Furniture, paintings, and other items are irrefutable proof that the Empress was subjected to intimate pleasures here. Although the secret room and remained classified, but soon the secret became manifest. And it happened during the Great Patriotic War. Amber Room got to Königsberg, the current name of Kaliningrad, in early March 1942. That's when the surprise of the Germans had no limit. They took pictures against the background of this no longer classified place, and as if they could not resist the contents of the room. It is no wonder that Catherine II began to be called the Prancing Empress, especially considering that many men as favourite lovers were subjected to her intimate pleasures. Therefore, the woman felt passion not only for Russia, but also for the men living in this country. A black streak in the life of the Empress. We draw your attention to the fact that it didn't do without failures during the reign of Catherine II. And although she did everything possible to make the Russian Empire prosper, the woman seemed to have forgotten about the most important thing. And this is directly related to the personal life of the statesman. The first discord in the family occurred because of Peter III. The health of the man over the years deteriorated, and both physical and mental. First, Peter became impotent and could no longer satisfy a woman at the proper level, and by the end of his life, he became insane. For example, as a result of a palace coup, it was necessary to go to extreme measures to remove the spouse of Catherine II from public office. There is a version that Peter III was killed. Then, Catherine II accumulated a pile of debts, and huge sums from the country's budget were spent on gifts to her favourites. It is hard to believe, but the Empress allocated more than 90 million rubles for her lovers, while the external debt of the country passed over 43 million. The woman was not particularly worried about this. After all, she was sure that the favourites will think of something, and the subsequent rulers will successfully pay for it. Clear signs of senile marasmus. In her old age, Catherine II seemed to have gone mad. Her health was deteriorating by the day, and in her head there were such thoughts that certainly will not come to mind a sane person. So, at the age of 70, the Empress was not afraid to become intimate with a horse. At least such rumours are rumoured, and the legend of intercourse with the animal exists to this day. As for intimate relations with men, Catherine II slept with one of the young men, who at that time was 22 years old. And this despite a difference of almost 50 years. Most likely, Catherine II valued young men very much for their beauty and sex appeal. The last ailment the great woman had to face was overeating. No talk of diet and proper nutrition the stray Empress did not support. With a height of just over 155 centimeters, the woman's weight was at least 85 kilograms. At the age of 67, the Russian Empress died because of a stroke. Such death is precisely associated with a disorderly lifestyle and improper nutrition. An interesting fact: servants with difficulty carried the heavy female body from the toilet. It was there that the Empress met her death. According to another version, it follows that Catherine was killed by a dwarf from Poland who hid in the throne unit beforehand. It is not for nothing that the interior of the room was created from Polish jewellery, so it is quite a real version, taking into account the fact that the statesman tried to get rid of many ill wishes. Conclusion. Thus, Catherine II the Great not only made a significant contribution to the development of Russia, she is also remembered for several circumstances that surprise even today. Therefore, the Empress, to a certain extent, is quite an ambiguous and controversial figure among the monarchs of the Russian Empire.